I smoothed the strap of my blush-colored dress over my shoulder, feeling the soft silk slide across my skin. The baby shower was in full swing, a canopy of pastel balloons and tiny rattles surrounding my brother and his wife. Laughter bubbled around the room, glasses clinking, babies cooing, and somewhere, faint music tickled the air. And yet there I stood, wrists staring back at me. A small, ridiculous-looking plastic band with bold letters. View guests. A gift, they said. Inclusion, they said. But really? It felt like a spotlight on my outsider status, a reminder of the way they had always watched me, never fully part of anything, always observed, always judged. I glanced at the table of desserts, the soft pink cupcakes and the delicate cookies, but my stomach knotted instead of curving with excitement. My phone buzzed quietly in my clutch. A message from an old friend. "You okay? You seem tense." I typed a smiley face back, knowing no one here would understand. They never had. My hands flexed around the wristband. The smooth plastic felt cheap against the tension thrumming in my veins. They expected a polite smile, a nod, maybe a soft, embarrassed laugh. But I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. Not today. Not ever again. I inhaled the scent of baby powder, mixed with a faint aroma of vanilla cupcakes, letting it ground me. And then, just as the room seemed to tilt in its usual way, I decided silence could be louder than words. When I close my eyes now, I can still hear my mother's voice slicing through the air, sharp and unyielding. "Maddie, why can't you just be normal?" I remember my hands shaking, clutching the edge of the kitchen counter, the fluorescent light above flickering like it knew my heart was breaking. My younger self, 18, hopeful, desperate for her family's approval, had stood there like a ghost, invisible yet painfully present. It wasn't the first time. Dinner tables, birthday parties, family vacations. I was always the shadow behind my older brother, Jacob, the one who got praise for grades, for charm, for fitting in. And me? I was different. Quiet. Observant. Passionate, yes, but that seemed to terrify them more than it inspired them. I remember the day I decided to leave my college fund untouched, choosing instead to work part-time and invest in my own dream, a small graphic design studio I had been sketching plans for since high school. My mother had caught me one afternoon, scrutinizing my notebook filled with designs, budgets, and sketches. "You think you can succeed on your own? You're being foolish, Maddie," she said, the sting in her tone like salt on an open wound. "You'll never be anything without us." I wanted to argue. I wanted to cry. I wanted to throw the notebook at her and scream that I was more than their doubts. But instead, I felt the lump in my throat, a strange combination of hurt and determination. My grandmother's words came to mind, whispered to me one rainy afternoon when I had felt invisible. "Maddie, the world will not always see you. That's why you must make yourself impossible to ignore." It was a gift disguised as advice. I held it close, memorized it, let it settle into my bones. That night, I packed a small bag, left a note on my bed, and stepped into the cold night air, leaving behind the kitchen that had been a battleground of silent expectations and unspoken disappointments. For the first time, I decided to bet on myself, my talents, my vision, my dreams, without waiting for approval. Every step away from my family was a mix of fear and exhilaration, but also a declaration. I would define my worth, my success, and my life on my own terms. I still remember the first day I walked into my tiny studio apartment, a stack of textbooks under one arm and a laptop bag slung over my shoulder. It smelled faintly of old carpet and ambition. The walls were bare, but my heart was full. I had no one to answer to, no one to judge me, except myself. And that, I realized, was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. My first client came through a friend of a friend. It wasn't much, a small local bakery that wanted a logo, but it was enough to make me feel that rush of validation I had craved for years. I stayed up nights, fueled by coffee and stubborn determination, sketching, editing, refining. My hands ached, my eyes burned, but every click of the mouse, every line of code, Every color swatch felt like a tiny rebellion against the little voice in my head that still remembered my mother's doubt. Then came Mr. Ellis, a seasoned creative director with a keen eye and an unusual belief in young talent. "Maddie," he said the first time we met, "most people give up before they even begin. I don't think you will." His confidence became a mirror, reflecting a version of myself I had always wanted to see. Under his mentorship, I learned not just design but negotiation, marketing, the subtle art of presenting myself as someone who belonged in rooms that had once felt forbidden. Of course, it wasn't easy. There were nights I cried into my sketchpad, questioning if I had made the right choice leaving family and security behind. There were clients who doubted me, bills that piled up, and the quiet gnawing fear that maybe I'd never be enough. But with every small win, a website launched, a logo approved, a client referral, I felt the slow, steady pulse of independence growing stronger. I kept my success secret, though. Family updates were minimal, social media carefully curated. I posted the occasional travel photo, a blurred cafe scene, but never the real proof of my ascent. Not yet. The world didn't need to see what my family had doubted. I didn't need their applause to validate me. And so, my life unfolded in layers of quiet victories. My studio grew into a thriving boutique agency. I hired 2 junior designers, taught them the same principles Mr. Ellis had taught me: persistence, precision, and pride in your work. I bought my first car outright, a little red sedan that felt like freedom on 4 wheels. I signed my first big corporate contract, the one that paid more than I had ever imagined. And for the first time, I realized the full weight of my independence. I was building a life that they couldn't touch or control. And yet, as I counted the months, the projects, the earnings, I felt a quiet longing, a tension I would later understand fully at my brother's baby shower. Because success is sweeter when it's yours alone, but silence can be louder than applause. The doors to the baby shower swung open, and the familiar murmur of family voices hit me like a wave. Jacob and his wife were at the center of a pastel-colored whirlwind, and the room seemed to glow with warmth. I stepped in quietly, adjusting my silk blouse, heels clicking softly against the hardwood floor. The view guests' wristband was snug around my wrist, an ironic badge of their judgment. They expected the quiet, compliant Maddie, the one who had always hovered at the edges, who would smile politely and fade into the background. But today, I was something else entirely. My agency's latest campaign posters hung discreetly in my tote bag, my portfolio glowing subtly on my tablet. My hair was styled just enough to look effortless, my posture radiating confidence I hadn't needed to fake in years. They noticed me the moment I entered. My mother's smile faltered, Jacob's brow arched in surprise, and even my younger cousin paused mid-laugh, eyeing me as if I had stepped out of a different reality. The room seemed to shrink around me. For a fraction of a second, I let them take it all in. The expensive watch on my wrist, the faint scent of my signature perfume, the way my gaze swept over the room, not seeking validation, but quietly commanding attention. Then I spoke. "I've been working on something," I said, voice calm, measured, carrying the weight of years of unacknowledged effort. I opened my tablet and swiped through slides, high-profile campaigns, major clients, revenue numbers that spoke louder than any words could. My family's expressions shifted from curiosity to disbelief, then to a slow, creeping shame. "Everything you thought I couldn't do, everything you doubted, I built it anyway. And not just for myself. I built a business, employed people, created opportunities that didn't exist before. And I did it without your approval, without your praise, without your permission." My mother's lips parted, her eyes glistening. Jacob looked like someone who had just realized the rules of the game had changed entirely. My father's jaw tightened, guilt etched into his features, and yet he said nothing. Silence, I realized, had become my most powerful ally. I closed the tablet, letting it fall softly onto the table. I walked past the pink cupcakes, past the Welcome Baby banner, and stood tall in the center of the room. Their silence was almost unbearable, but that was the point. I didn't yell. I didn't demand their recognition. I let them absorb it. Let them see the woman they had underestimated for years. The woman who no longer needed their permission. And as the faint hum of chatter resumed, I felt a strange satisfaction. Power didn't always need to shout. Sometimes it whispered, it lingered, it commanded attention simply by existing. The room was quiet now, the hum of conversation reduced to a soft murmur. I looked at my family, really looked at them for the first time in years, not as a little girl hoping for approval, but as Maddie Hayes, the woman who had quietly built a life they couldn't touch. "I'm willing to help," I said, my voice calm but firm. "But things can't go back to the way they were." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. This isn't punishment, it's opportunity. And it comes with conditions. My mother blinked, caught between relief and defensiveness. Jacob shifted uncomfortably. I let them sit in that silence just long enough to realize that I meant every word. "First," I began, "everyone needs to be honest about their actions. No more dismissing, no more belittling. Accountability is non-negotiable." My father nodded slightly, swallowing hard. "Second," I continued, "you have to pursue something meaningful, passion, growth, contribution, without leaning on me or anyone else as a crutch. Your lives are yours to define, but I won't let toxicity continue." I could see Jacob's jaw tighten. He had been used to taking the easy path, and now he had to look inward. "Third," I said, softer this time, "relationships are built on respect. Not just with me, but with each other. You need to support, not compete or control. Let's create a family that celebrates rather than diminishes." I let my gaze linger on them, each condition echoing the very lessons I had learned in solitude: persistence, independence, self-respect. I wasn't punishing them. I was giving them a chance to grow alongside me, not at my expense. And yet, I didn't soften completely. You may stumble. You may resist. But I won't step back into the role of the one who fixes everything for you. If you want to be in my life, it has to be as equals or not at all. The tension in the room shifted. I could see them weighing my words, realizing that my authority came not from anger, but from the calm assurance of someone who had survived, thrived, and refused to compromise her worth. My silence had already spoken volumes, and now my conditions gave them a roadmap, one they had ignored when I was younger. For the first time in a long while, I felt the balance tip. Power was no longer something to fear. It was something I owned, something that allowed me to protect myself, and something that could, if they chose wisely, help them become better versions of themselves. Weeks passed after the baby shower, and slowly, subtly, the changes began. My mother started asking for advice, not critiques but genuine guidance, on her own projects. Jacob sent me a message one evening, hesitant yet sincere. "Can we talk? I think I want to do something meaningful too." My father, quieter than ever, began volunteering at a local community center, a way to reconnect without seeking recognition. I watched them, not with the triumph of revenge, but with the warmth of hope. They were learning slowly that respect and acknowledgement are earned, not demanded. That silence, when wielded wisely, teaches lessons more enduring than any scolding. One morning, I found myself holding the small notebook my grandmother had given me years ago, the one filled with her words of encouragement. "Make yourself impossible to ignore." I ran my fingers over the worn edges, feeling the weight of her wisdom settling into me once again. That same advice had fueled my journey from invisibility to recognition. Now, it felt like a bridge between my past and the present, proof that the lessons of resilience, self-belief, and quiet strength never fade. Sitting at my desk in my office, I glanced at the city's skyline through the window. Sunlight spilled across my workspace, illuminating the photographs of my team, my achievements, and even small mementos of personal victories. I breathed deeply, savoring the calm power of a life built on my own terms. And I realized, finally, that the woman I had become wasn't just successful, she was free. Free from the shadows of doubt, free from the need for approval, and free to choose how, and with whom, she shared her world. I smiled faintly as I slipped my wristband from that day onto the shelf, a symbol, no longer of exclusion, but of transformation. The quiet, measured power of silence had taught them and reminded me that the strongest voices aren't always the loudest. Because sometimes, the most profound statement a woman can make is this: I am here. I have grown. And I will no longer be overlooked.